everybody to this week's Trending Topics Talk. I'm Sue Williams, and I'm the founder of Booming Encore, and I'm delighted to be joined by Joe Casey, who is a retirement coach and managing partner at Retirement Wisdom, and Mike Drack from Victory Lap Retirement, who is also a retirement coach, and author, and public speaker. So welcome, gentlemen. Glad to have you.
Thank you, Susan.
So let's get right to it. Here's the first topic up for discussion. And I'm titling it, Should We Revisit the Whole Idea of Living in Communes? And the reason why I'm suggesting it is that there was some new research from the Ohio State University that found that mice housed in groups actually had better memories and healthier brains than animals that lived in pairs. So when they call that the traditional couple. So it kind of made me think maybe that whole idea of living in a commune, minus the interesting lifestyle aspect of it, might not be so bad. What do you guys think? Joe, you want to start?
Sure. Well, I'm glad I kept my tie-dyed t-shirt from 1967. Make them in handy again. I think it really captures the importance of the social relationships and the connectivity. And it reminded me, actually, of growing up with an active neighborhood. And I think a lot of times people got that benefit of social connections from that. In our case, we had 5 of my mother's siblings within walking distance. So it was an extended family that you could get that connectivity from. The only concern I have about it is it can lead to really a lack of multi-generational interaction, because I think that's so important is really to spend time not only with people our own age, but people who are younger to keep that learning going. But that's my take on it.
Okay, Mike, what do you think?
Well, I don't know a lot about mice, but I'm a strong believer in socialization, having a lot of friends, especially as you get older. My concern today is, in Toronto, they're building all these condos and whatnot, and we're losing touch with even the person next door. We don't even know these people. So we're isolated, and, when we leave our jobs and, we lose a lot of our work friends, we don't replace them, which increases the isolation, and isolation is a bad thing long term.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I was thinking about this, and I even like the retirement communities, I think, are trying to, in some ways, emulate it, by putting together a community. So, Joe, hitting on your point, I think we're kind of missing out on that whole intergenerational aspect. And secondly, the idea of a retirement community is often people are being cared for rather than caring for others. And that whole kind of sense of purpose and watching out for each other, I think it's a slippery slope. And I could actually see how this research, could actually support that, because you're now engaged with other people, you're actually helping each other, supporting each other. And I think especially with loneliness being such a major epidemic these days, especially for the elderly, it's something we really need to kind of keep an eye on. So anyways, it was interesting research, I thought, and, just kind of supports that whole idea of socialization. Okay, next topic this was actually quite scary. What they found is that a new study from the National Bureau of Economic Research discovered that the average male upon retirement experiences a dramatic decrease in nutrition intake. Specifically, their calorie intake drops by 19% and their protein intake fell by 17%. Now, they're citing it's because of the money situation, which possibly leads into it. But do you think there's something else also going on here? Mike, what do you think?
Well, when I first read that article, I was thinking of that movie Mad Max, where, there was no food and he was eating out of a can of dog food. And once he finished his share, he tossed it to the dog that was in the cab with him. And he finished it off. It kind of scared me, but I really don't believe in the reason that they're kind of tabling for us. I think there could be other reasons. I'm hoping that as we age and retire, we're getting smarter and we're more concerned about our health, so we're watching what we eat. Because we're not working, maybe we're not going out to lunch as much with our colleagues at work, and we're staying at home, we're cooking our own food and more wholesome food too at the same time. So I think there's a lot of different moving parts to it. I hope the things that I talked about are the reason that's happening. I don't think it's just because people don't have money and they can't afford to buy food. Right?
Yeah. Joe, what do you think?
Well, I'd echo and build upon Mike's points around it's not just the one factor, the financial factor necessarily. A lot of these things are interconnected. And the author pointed out there too that the social part that we talked about the last aspect, and also the danger of becoming more sedentary. So those are things that are controllable. You can do things like volunteering, mentoring that'll build connections. You also can be more active, and particularly in that early phase of retirement, because I think there's a tendency to drift a little bit or treat it like a vacation, but to really have something in place where you're building toward being more active, eating right, getting those right habits in place, making sure you've got diet, exercise, and social relationships in place.
What I would really like to see is, like, we all know we are what we eat, and I'd love to see nutrition actually be integrated back into the health system and actually be something that's monitored and discussed and educated, because I don't know how well people really understand like the calories and good calories, bad calories, that sort of thing. And I think we could possibly use with some education, especially as we get older. But also the money aspect. There was another study that was done that said, the cost of lousy food is half the price of the cost of decent food. And I think we need to somehow figure out how do we rationalize that, because when you're looking at a menu and you're going, okay, fries are $2 and a salad $6. Unfortunately, sometimes the economics will kick in, and we have to somehow come to grips with how do we actually make really good quality food reasonably priced so that people will actually buy it and not be forced to sometimes make these choices that they may not want to make. So
if I could add to that,
something to watch for. Sorry, Mike.
Sorry, if I could add to that, when I go to a restaurant and I see the French fries like what you were describing, I'm looking at the calorie count all the time.
Yeah.
I want to keep it down low. So many times I'll say, no, I can't have fries with that, and I'll go for the small burger instead. And it's just one of those things you're more cognizant of, I think, as you age and you realize the importance of it. But I find all the information out there with relating to nutrition and things like that is so confusing. And one day coffee's good for you, and one day it's bad for you and causes cancer, and it always keeps changing. It's creating a lot of confusion. So I agree with you. We need to simplify things for people.
I think so, and just make it easier for people, and take away the whole cost barrier thing that may be possibly causing some challenges for folks. Finally, our last topic for the day is we all know how much artificial intelligence is disrupting so many things. Well, guess what? It's starting to hit the financial sector as well. And the robo-advisors are hitting the scene. Mike, given your background sort of in the financial field, can you just kind of explain what this whole robo-advisor thing is?
Well, I think it came into being because of something Warren Buffett said one day about saying, probably for the average investor, the best route to go would be to buy index funds and just invest in the market as a whole. And his rationale was because you avoid paying a lot of these high fees that investment advisors are charging today. And it makes a lot of sense. So what companies have done, they've been created, and what they've done is develop a software program. And they'll talk to a potential client, and they'll find out their risk appetite, and they'll design an investment portfolio for them that would be managed electronically. So you're not dealing with a person, you're really dealing with a software program and a computer, and every time you make a deposit to increase your investment portfolio, they'll allocate those funds out. So they'll spread them amongst different ETFs. Yeah. Based on your risk tolerance, and it just continues from there. But the benefit really is low cost.
Joe, have you had any experience with these things? Are you using them yourself now or anything?
Well, in full disclosure, I worked for Merrill Lynch for 26 years, so a full service brokerage firm. Although I was on the HR side, not the business side. Right. So I've got a little bit of bias toward the value of an advisor, but I think it comes down to something you wrote about once about that may not seem related, about aging in place versus aging in the right place. And I think advisor or no advisor, the other question is, do you have the right advisor? Because there's real value to a good advisor. I think the article pointed out the complexity of decisions regarding financial matters in retirement. It can help to have a really savvy advisor. And I would add a team of advisors. You may need specialists in some areas, including, and this would be talking my book and Mike's book, including someone can help with the non-financial aspects, because it's all interconnected. You can't really isolate them.
No, I agree.
Yeah. The other thing is, I was thinking about this, and I think I could see how a combination could actually work well, meaning that you may have certain things that may be, somewhat self-managed, but other things where you actually need to have somebody to consult with, especially when it comes to taxes and how do you manage that. And it can get quite complicated very quickly. So to just,
That's right.
the idea of just handing it off to some sort of machine to, quote, take care of me, does kind of intimidate me a bit. And I don't think I could see myself going full bore into that. But maybe if I was younger or something, I didn't have such a, wasn't so dependent on, this being my livelihood for the rest of my life after I, exit the work world, it might be something that might be a bit attractive, I guess.
Well,
Well,
I
that's
think that's why they were created in the first place, is to really go after the millennials who are, starting out basically just, creating these portfolios. So they're very low minimums to start. And eventually at some point, once you reach a certain threshold, you need more advice, better advice. That's the time you would go to maybe an investment advisor, and you can get all this other value added in.
Yeah.
Point, right?
Joe, did you want to add something?
I think it is, Mike, and you were saying it depends on the person's individual circumstances and the phase of life they're in. But I think whether it's a certified financial planner or investment advisor, there are people to consider, especially ones who you can get recommendations on, who have seen different markets, different conditions, and other retirees that you may be able to benefit from some of their lessons learned.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something, people should always be aware of who they're actually dealing with and exactly what their needs are and what their objectives are, and then figuring out what the right solution is for them in the long run. So that ends our session for today. So thank you both so much for being here. Really appreciate it. And to everybody out there, hope you're making everyday matter and living your booming Encore. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.